George Stacy is a complicated guy who deals with themes like duty, loss, and the challenge of balancing his personal life with his job. His life story shows a man who is strong in his beliefs and dedicated to the law, but who is also deeply affected by the personal tragedies that touch him and his family. He started out with dreams that matched his role as a law enforcer, driven by a sense of justice and a wish to make the world a safer place. His marriage to Helen Stacy brought him some happiness, but her sudden death changed everything for him. Now alone to raise their daughter Gwen, George worked hard to teach her the values he held dear: integrity, responsibility, and justice. Even though he loved Gwen deeply, his job as a police officer took up a lot of his time. He struggled to find the right balance between being a caring dad and doing his duty to help others. Sadly, this sometimes made Gwen feel alone, especially after her mom passed away. George wanted to be close to her, but the demands of his job often kept him away. This absence meant Gwen didn't always have the steady support she needed from her dad, forcing her to lean on her own strength at a young age. As Gwen got older, George encouraged her interests, whether it was ballet, gymnastics, or her band, the Mary Janes. What he didn't know was that Gwen was secretly living a double life as Spider-Woman after being bitten by a radioactive spider. The tension between his job as a cop and his unknowing connection to his daughter's superhero side created a lot of drama. His negative view of Spider-Woman makes sense given his role as a police captain. He sees her as a vigilante who disrupts the law and order he's committed to protecting, even though she means well. Even after Spider-Woman saved him from danger, his opinion didn't change. His strict adherence to the law and need for control kept him from realizing that Spider-Woman was motivated by the same sense of justice he valued. Things took a darker turn when Gwen's best friend Peter Parker tragically died, and Spider-Woman was found at the scene. His grief and commitment to the law turned into a deep hatred for the vigilante, whom he blamed for Peter's death. For years, George became fixated on capturing Spider-Woman, leading a manhunt that took over both his work and personal life. This obsession put a strain on his relationship with Gwen, who, unbeknownst to him, was hiding in plain sight as the very vigilante he was after. The growing distance between them was clear, as Gwen, dealing with her own guilt and confusion over Peter's death, pulled away from everyone, leaving her father feeling more isolated in his quest. Gwen's refusal to talk to her dad about Spider-Woman only added to George's frustration. He saw her silence as a lack of interest, not realizing that she was quietly struggling with the same feelings he thought she was avoiding. This created an even bigger emotional gap between them, with George caught up in his relentless search for justice and Gwen trying to come to terms with her two identities. The emotional peak of George's story happens when he finally discovers that Spider-Woman is actually Gwen. In a tense moment, just as he's about to catch her, she reveals her face. The shock of realizing that the daughter he had vowed to protect was the very person he had been hunting shattered him. His instincts as a police officer kicked in, and in a moment of cold detachment, he started reading her Miranda rights. This action, showing the conflict between his duty and his family, hit Gwen hard, leaving her heartbroken over her father's inability to accept her for who she truly was.
You have the right to remain silent.
What?
Anything you say can and will
Dad,
be
are
used
you
against
really
you in a
this
court
afraid of
law.
me?
You have the right
Dad,
to return.
stop!
This moment really shows George's deep inner struggle. His whole life had been shaped by a strict belief in the law, but when he faced the reality that his own daughter was involved, he found himself torn between his job and being a dad. The shock left him frozen, and before he could fully grasp what was happening, Gwen was taken away by an alternate version of Spider-Man, leaving their relationship in a broken state. Even after their painful confrontation, his love for Gwen ultimately won out. The time apart gave him a chance to think about what really mattered and the reality of his situation. When Gwen finally came back, their meeting was filled with raw emotion and vulnerability. His choice to leave the police force marked a huge change in him. For the first time, he realized that being a dad was way more important than his duty to the law.
My job, being captain, this whole thing doesn't matter anymore. You're the best thing I've ever done.
Giving Gwen the watch left by Hobie showed how much he accepted her identity as Spider-Woman. It was his way of supporting his daughter's journey, even if it wasn't the path he had imagined for her. The once strict police captain had transformed into a father who recognized the strength, courage, and heroism in his daughter.
Parenting stuff. Big ass mystery.